It has been a long time since we filmed a regular Dolly Tales episode. I think the last one we did was at the beginning of 2024 for our Dolly Decades, like, sub-series of this. But as you can hear, we've both been sick. Colleen brought home the plague from work. It's actually just like a head cold that's been going around. The topic of this video is second chances. Dolls that we saw, that we either wanted and left behind, or that we saw and for some reason like got stuck in the memory and we were reunited with them randomly later on. And I know there's like a lot of dolls in my collection I probably forgot, and there's actually like a few that we got like in bins that there's a lot of dolls in that bin, but I grabbed a doll to represent them as opposed to like all the dolls from the bin. I have a few from childhood, a lot from like my early days as an adult collector, and some more recent ones. Without further ado, we're going to start with the childhood ones. This is Nova. She is a Dolls of the World Indian Barbie from 1995. So I remember seeing her at this indoor flea market. It was set up in like old storage units. The place has since closed. It closed sometime around the pandemic. But Dad used to take us there all the time. And there was a seller that had some boxed Barbies, and I remember seeing her a lot. And I got it in my head, like I would fantasize and daydream about her. I got it in my head that I really wanted her because Barbies with like jet black hair and this like tan skin tone really weren't that common back in the day. 7 or 8 years out of date by the time I found her. And I remember deciding if I finally wanted her, and I was having trouble like finding what booth she was at. I don't remember how much time had passed from my first time seeing her to like when I got her, but a lot of times like I would randomly get a fancy for a type of doll and remember, oh, I think I saw them at this flea market. I ended up finding her. She was kind of expensive, if I remember, like $20, but I love her. She's one of my favorite Barbies in my collection, and she's named Nova after the character from Planet of the Apes because I used to watch a lot of sci-fi stuff with my parents.
Then we're going to move on to my pet pal Skipper, 1991. Her name is Robin.
You've seen her a lot in videos.
Oh yeah, big time. She's one of my favorite dolls in the whole collection. I saw Robin in her box, still sealed, in the fall of 2002. I looked at the price tag and I thought, oh, 20 bucks? Because $20 seems like a small fortune. Like, nah, I don't like her that much. Which, like, you know, after thinking about it for a couple weeks, I was like, oh man, I really should have bought that doll. Next time we go to that flea market, and it's the same flea market Shelly bought Nova at, so it ties in well. I went looking for her, and I thought she was from this seller that we'd seen around literally since we were kids, but she was actually the seller nearby's booth, but I didn't know. So when I asked the seller, do you still have that Skipper doll? And she's like, oh, I think she went, I'm sorry. And I was wicked disappointed, to the point where I thought I was gonna cry. We went in the next booth and there she was, still sitting on the shelf in her little pink box, and I'm like, oh my god, she's still here. And I think my hands are probably shaking when I took out the money. And that led to her being like my favorite doll. Like, I played with this doll so much. I was obsessed. She was like my main character. She was a cheerleader, and she was a good student, and she was everything. She was like the center of my universe for several years after the fact. And Shelly recently crimped her hair, and I just love Robin. Now, before I found Robin, back when my mom was alive in the spring of 2002, Shelly had bought her pretty surprise Barbie at a regular flea market, the one that we still go to. Yes, Jenny. Now, the seller who had Jenny had a little blue table. We bought the table. Now, when we were buying the table, she'd taken a couple of dolls off the chairs, including this really cute little blonde, blue-eyed Skipper, and I was just taken in by this Skipper, but it was before I was really into Skipper. I was intrigued, but it was like a couple months before I actually started collecting Skipper. I got into them more into the fall, and this was sometime in the spring of 2002. And I just kind of like, every time I saw that blue table that we literally played with every day, I thought about that Skipper doll and how I wanted her. And she kind of weighed on my mind to the point where I wanted Robin's best friend to be like a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed Skipper. And I ended up finding my Hawaiian Fun Skipper, Margie, that winter. And Margie was kind of like a stand-in for this doll, who I fantasized about. Well, the following spring in 2003, the seller came back, and the reason I know it was definitely the same dolls is not only were a few of the dolls the same, but my other Skipper, my babysitter, was like Jenny was wearing that doll's outfit. So like you could tell they were definitely in the same home and like redressed. And I was so surprised because like I know only a year had passed, but a year feels longer when you're young. I literally thought I was never going to see this doll again.
And you never know with the flea market seller if they're there and they're new, if they're going to be a regular, if they're just going to be like set up one time and never come back. That does happen. Like sometimes you'll see someone maybe twice in a season like spread apart and then never see them again, and sometimes they'll become regulars and sometimes you'll never see them again.
Exactly. So I thought I was never going to see her again, so I was so excited about her and the babysitter skipper, who I ended up naming Adrian. And I was just so happy to finally have her. I named her Sonia, and I love her.
We reunited her with that outfit.
Yes, we did. And Shelly fixed her bangs.
Used to be in like a big puffy ponytail.
And it's funny because when I think about her, I still see her with her hair in the big puffy ponytail.
So now we're going to dolls from adulthood. I'm gonna start with the one from eBay. So this is Fashion Secrets Megara. I might call her Megara. I'm sorry. It triggers people when I say names wrong. It is what it is. I really got into Disney. That's like my whole backstory of how I got back into dolls in 2011 was because of Disney dolls. And of course that's what I was looking for on eBay. And at the time, at the start of the year, most of the flea markets around our area were closed because they closed during the winter because a lot of them are outdoors. So I was doing a lot of online shopping, and this was like a doll I always wanted as a kid. Now I had one as a child that was actually from a big doll bin, but she didn't have like her original outfit. She didn't have any of her stuff. She was in like really poor condition. So I was looking on like Google image search results, and I saw this doll in a lot, like open but complete, with one of the fashion packs for Megara, the pink dress. It's complete too, but it was sold. This was like something that had sold like a month before, and I was super bummed out because like for the price the seller had sold her for, it was like exactly the price I wanted to pay. She came with an extra outfit that would dress my naked childhood doll. She was my dream Megara. So I'm on eBay like every day at that point looking at new Hercules dolls listings, and then who comes up? Randomly, this Megara. And I know it was the same doll. The pictures were the same. The outfit was the same. I'm guessing the person that originally bought her didn't pay or returned her or something, and I could not believe my luck, but she was a bid. But luckily for me, someone else had the same doll and fashion pack in their boxes, or like with their boxes, and I knew just the fact that the boxes were there was going to make all the collectors who wanted that doll, like, you know, a Megara, go for the other lot. And sure enough, I ended up winning the bid, and I was bad at bidding on stuff at eBay at the time. So I was really, really, really excited to get this doll and her outfit to dress my childhood lady. And the seller did not ship them well though. I remember she just was stuffed in like a regular thin, non-padded envelope with stuff just loosely floating around. So you can be reunited with stuff on eBay because she had sold like the month before in 2011. That was the spring I got really back into collecting Bratz dolls. And this is first edition Kobe. So there was this seller at this huge outdoor flea market. I think it's one of the biggest ones in my state, but we would only go once in a while because you have to get there really early. Otherwise, everybody packs up by like 11 in the morning. So there was this guy, we called him 50 Cent Guy. I got a lot of my Bratz dolls from him for 50 cents or 75 cents, or sometimes $1 depending on how many clothes they were wearing. So this was like way back in the early days. I only had like a few extra outfits that were like my childhood clothes, and I had a few fashion packs for my like Dylan doll as a kid, but like I didn't have a lot of boys' clothes and shoes. And I remember seeing Kobe at this guy's booth, and I wanted him, but he didn't have feet, and they can't fit the girls' shoes, and I didn't think I had any spare boys' shoes. I had run out of them at the time. So a few weeks or a couple months passed, and at some point I got like another lot that had one spare pair of boys' shoes, and Colleen immediately said, "Oh, you should have bought that Kobe." Of course, I was devastated because I loved this Kobe doll. He had weighed on my mind. And then next time we were at the flea market, 50 Cent Guy was back, and he still had Kobe, and I had that one perfect pair of shoes. Because if you don't know, if you don't collect Bratz, their shoes, are their feet. So there would have been no way for me to like display him or do anything with him without feet. Yeah, I'm very happy to have him. And I actually saw 50 Cent guy at our local flea market like the year after that, and I bought some of his leftover dolls. I just didn't include them here because it's the same seller, but they will like move flea markets or trade stuff.
Yeah, like the lady that I was talking to about Robin, she's been at our regular flea market. She was at that old one that closed. I've seen her at a couple different flea markets over the years.
And then also from that same summer, this is one of my most infamous Bratz stories of all time. This is Wintertime Wonderland Sasha. She represents a bin. So in like the first few opening weekends at our local flea market, I saw a big box that was loaded with Bratz dolls and some Barbies and Disney dolls. It had like a big hodgepodge of stuff. I fell in love with World Twins Nevaeh. I didn't know that she was a twins doll because I was like brand new to collecting again, and there was like a whole era of Bratz I didn't know about. But I fell in love with her, and I was like leafing through the bin, and the dolls were $1 each. And I ended up getting like a few separately, like Skateboard Chloe and the first twins, Phoebe and Roxy, but they weren't wearing their outfits. And as I was looking for the black hair doll I liked, I picked another black hair doll up who turned out to be Peyton. And I'm like, no, this isn't the one I wanted. She looks similar, but she doesn't have the red streak. So I foolishly put her back, and there was a part of me that was like, you should really buy this whole bin because the guy will probably sell it for really cheap. But there was this other part of me that was like, no, my collection needs to be sorted. So by the time I got home and I'm identifying the dolls, I realized that that was Nevaeh's twin I left behind, that I had been holding in my hand that I almost bought by accident. We spent the whole summer from like April to September looking for that seller at the flea market every weekend. Dad would make sure to take me there every weekend looking for that guy. So finally,
we call him Bratz guy to this day. Because
yeah, and he still sets up. He doesn't really have dolls. He usually has a lot of movies, but I recognize his movies. And I'm like, wait, this is the guy. And he always wears this like very distinctive hat. So I book it over, but I don't see the doll. So my dad asks him if he still has his dolls. Well, they're no longer in a box. They're in like a big plastic bag. It looks like a Santa sack. And
oh, I forgot about that.
He had been selling them for like, you know, I guess at different flea markets, or maybe he was setting up or packing up before or after we left the flea market. I don't know, but he had been selling them off. So it was all the scraps that were left over, all the dolls that had like nipples drawn on them, Sharpie all over them, cut hair. There was some clothes, but the clothes had Sharpie on them. But I was not about to like let those dolls get past me again. And Dad bought me the bin for $20. We call it Bratz Guy bin. Peyton had sold by that point. But Wintertime Wonderland Sasha had not, and you can see she has cut hair. I have another one that doesn't have cut hair, but that she is like a good representation of like
the condition.
Their hair had been cut, and yeah, they had been drawn on and stuff. But yeah, it was kind of like a Christmas miracle that I was able to get reunited with as many of them as I did. And lesson learned: if a bin looks really good and the seller doesn't want a lot for them separately, just ask how much the whole bin is.
So in 2011, we also started going to antique stores with Dad. And we kind of were into this like vintage Barbie phase.
From like the 60s.
Yeah, because now vintage is like in the 90s, which makes me feel very old.
Vintage is actually from the early 2000s now. 20 years
yeah,
old is considered
I'm starting to feel antique. Both really into vintage, and I've always been really into Skipper since 2002, as aforementioned. So I saw this Scooter doll, and she was in this like bad handmade knit outfit for $20, and
25.
Again, 25, and again it seemed like a small fortune at the time, so I walked away and I left, and I really, really regretted it. So, you know, again, sometimes it's literally like a repeat of the Robin story, because again, I went back, I looked for her. There were so many booths of vintage Barbies that I couldn't remember which was which. So I saw an area that I thought she was at, and I'm like, oh no, she's sold, just like what happened with Robin. And then I saw her and I'm like, well, I'm definitely gonna buy her. And Dad had even bought me my vintage Skipper scooter case that day. It was really special. I really loved her because I got reunited with her, and she was my first vintage doll besides my childhood bendable leg. And she means a lot to me, and she was from my dad.
So the last like year my dad was alive, which if you're new to my channel, my dad had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at the end of 2009, and he had like the surgery and stuff to remove it. And even though he shouldn't have lived, he survived through that, and he like went on to have all of his like chemo and stuff. So he was like disabled after that, and it didn't work. So he would be at home, and he would have good days and he would have bad days. And because I had finished up cosmetology school, I would be at home a lot with him, taking care of him, because, you know, I was like looking for jobs at salons and stuff. And I'd be at home with him. Then when Colleen graduated college, we were all kind of home, and that's how we got back into dolls. And I would spend a lot of time like looking at dolls online, and my dad was very supportive of our doll hobby, and he would be looking on Craigslist for me, and he started researching all of these like flea markets and stuff, because that was something we used to love doing like when we were kids with him, was like flea market hunting. My dad started taking us to all of these like different places he'd find out about, like through word of mouth or in the old like want ad things he'd read or online. And I remember we went to this like little hole in the wall thrift store. There weren't a lot of dolls. There was one doll in the whole store. She was wearing a Snow White dress. And I remember seeing the Snow White dress and getting excited, picking her up and being like, oh, that's Purple Passion Barbie. I already had Purple Passion Barbie. I had her as a kid. I got her at the flea market. So I put her down, and, you know, I didn't think anything of it. So sometime later, like a few months, a few weeks, it's hard to remember exactly when, my dad would often go out and like, when he was feeling good, he'd go visit like my Uncle David or his friend Jimmy, or he'd just go around, you know, secondhand shopping. And he must have been out that way, and sometimes he'd find dolls for me, and he thought she was Snow White because of the Snow White dress.
The hair was way the wrong color.
My dad thought a my scene doll was a Bratz doll, so, you know, he saw her and was like, oh, Snow White, Shelley collects Disney. So he came home with her, and he's like, oh, I have something for you. And, like, I have a photographic memory, so as soon as I saw her, I remembered, like, I still remember to this day, like, where she was on the lower shelf and her position and all that. So she's really special because, you know, my dad thought of me and picked her up, and her outfit that she was wearing went to good use. On my many adventures with Dad at the flea market, we would encounter a lot of Bratz dolls, because that was my main thing. And back then, that first like year or so that I was into dolls, I saw Bratz dolls pretty often at the flea market. I don't see them very often at all now. Like for the past probably close to 10 years, they've been pretty scarce. But I remember at that huge outdoor flea market I got Kobe at, a different seller had this Sasha, the Formal Funk Sasha, in the gold dress that comes with her, and she was in a baggie with little Bratz Slumber Party Yasmin, and they were like $5 or something. And I remember I had Sasha, I got her from 50 Cent Guy, but like I didn't have her outfit, and I didn't have that mini doll, but I felt like the price was too much, and my dad had offered to buy her for me, and I was like, no, it's fine. So some time passed, like about a year, I think, or yeah, I think about a year. I think it was like 2012 when I finally got this doll. I'm at the local flea market, and a totally different seller has this doll in the same bag with the same like blue star Bratz comb and the same little Bratz Slumber Party Yasmin. Like, again, I have a photographic memory. So yeah, sellers trade stuff at flea markets. They'll swap stuff around, and that's, my dad had friends who did it, so he knew all of the like inner workings of it, and that's how she ended up at the local flea market. And as soon as I saw her, I'm like, I can't leave her for a second time. So I do have her, and I have a little Slumber Party Yasmin too. I just forgot to grab her. I feel like it would be, I had her before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So in the fall of 2011, we were at the local flea market. It was one of the last weeks that we were there. It was really cold. I remember Dad went to look at something else, and I spotted a zipper case of dolls in like a 50-gallon Ziploc that was overflowing with some spare doll clothes. We ended up buying it. We call it the Generation Girl lot. In the extra bag of clothes, like not the zipper case, but in the Ziploc, there were pieces to a Sparkling Jasmine from 2001, and it was the pants, I think, not these pants, but there were pants like this. And the doll was nowhere to be found, which I already had 2 of this doll, so I was like bummed because she's my favorite Disney doll of all time. If you're wondering, this was my childhood favorite doll. I technically already had her. So 2 years, well, about a year and a half later, it was opening day 2013. There weren't a lot of people set up. It wasn't that nice of a weekend, but the same seller was set up, and he had a huge bin filled with mostly naked Barbies. At the time, we had trouble getting dolls for pretty cheap because there was a seller who set up who would buy everyone else's cheap Barbies and then resell them for like $4 or $5 a piece.
And all she did was stick them in a plastic bag.
Yes. So it was a problem. We had to boycott buying from her to freeze her out of like, because we were some of her main customers.
Right. So we're like, well, if we're buying from her, it's just making the problem worse. So we had to like literally stop buying them.
Yes. So when we saw this big bin of naked Barbies mostly, we were tempted to buy it, so she couldn't, and because there were a lot of really cool ones, but initially we just grabbed a few of our favorites off the top, and this Jasmine was one of them. I saw her and I'm like, ooh, that's like sparkling Jasmine, she's in beautiful condition, she's super pretty, and she's only like $1 or $2, so I'm gonna buy her, right? Well, after we watched the rest of the flea market and didn't find anything, we decided to go back and buy this bin of dolls because, you know, the guy was really cheap. So he sold us the whole box for maybe $20 or $25, and there was over 60 dolls, ergo the name, the 60 doll bin. I did not realize until we got home, and I started like pulling out different Disney dolls. I realized that his stuff got separated because this Jasmine went to those pants that I got a 1.5 years earlier. There was an Ariel doll that also had like her whole outfit was in the bag, but the doll was in the separate bin, and that happened. He must have had like a big group of dolls, some of them from different people, and they got separated. So I felt like that was very fitting for this video because like sometimes the doll and the stuff like gets separated.
It happened with my Ricky doll.
Yeah.
We got his shirt, and then a couple years later from the same seller, Ricky turned up.
Yes.
And I think he got separated in his shed.
Yeah, Rocker Barbie. This is my favorite Rocker Barbie. She's the one that's in the worst condition. She has a reroute. So we were at the flea market.
I don't think she's in the worst condition.
I want to say it was the fall of 2012. And
I agree.
There was a paper bag on the ground, and I saw doll hair sticking out of it. So I go over and I look through the bag, and it's like the saddest display of Barbies you'd ever find. Like really bald, cut hair. Their clothes were filthy, and there was only a few fragments. And I remember specifically pulling out the Rocker Barbie, who was mostly bald, and I was like, ooh, you know, Rocker Barbie. This is my favorite era of Barbie, the 1980s. So I like wanted her, but I already had a nice Rocker Barbie or 2 at the time, so I was like, all right, you know, I don't need to ask. So I kind of put her back in the bag and like went off to do my thing. So then about 6 months later, we sold all of my dad's toy trucks, well not all, but most of my dad's toy trucks, to this friend of one of my dad's friends who sets up at flea markets. His name is Bob. We have a whole Dolly Tales episode, by the way, on these Bob Barbies. Anyway, so while Bob was over here looking at my dad's trucks and we were like bartering on the price, we were talking about dolls, and he looked at my doll shelves, my display, and he thought it was spectacular what we did with the dolls, and he said, you know, I have some dolls that I got like this huge like container from a girl who grew out of them, and I've been selling them off for years, and there's a few left over, and I'll just give them to you because I know you'll do good things with them. So a few weeks later he came back and they were in this paper bag, and you know, after he left and we're going through them, I started recognizing the dolls, including this Rocker Barbie, and like it clicked. He sets up at the local flea market. That was his stuff, and that's how I ended up getting this Rocker Barbie. And did I have to reroute her? Should she have been a body donor? Yes, but as you can see, she's done really well for herself because I reunited her with this whole outfit piece by piece. Miss Marie Osmond. I have 3 Maries. This is my favorite. So I saw her sometime in the summer of 2013 at the local flea market. There was a seller who they were like an older couple, and then the lady was selling the dolls at the booth, and they were all kind of like standing up in these like containers, and all of the toys looked like they were from the 60s and 70s. And I remember I was looking over her dolls, and I ended up buying a twist and turn Barbie from her that was in really nice condition, wearing the wrong outfit. and they were kind of expensive. They were like $5 each, which for me was expensive. But I saw this Marie Osmond doll, and I recognized her. I knew that she was Marie Osmond, and I have a thing for celebrity dolls from like all time. I really, especially the 70s ones though. I don't know, they're like really ugly and charming to me.
Ugly and charming.
So I would see Donnie around a lot, but not Marie. So I thought, it's $5 is kind of expensive. I don't want to spend like $10 on 2 dolls. So I just bought the one Barbie and left. Well, she didn't come back. And I thought, okay, that seller was a one and done. So then, a few months later in the fall, one of the last weekends we went, in a completely different part of the flea market, we're walking and I see these old vintage toys that I recognize and the lady. Editing Shelly here, I have no idea what happened to the rest of this clip of Marie Osmond and the beginning of the clip about the next doll. I don't know if my camera shut off earlier than I thought it did or what happened, but now I have to fill in the gaps. So basically, when I recognized the lady's toys, I checked all of her stuff, and lo and behold, she had Marie Osmond, and she knew who all of her dolls were, by the way. She like had little tags on them of what they were, and you know, she was telling me how she had 2 other Marie dolls. So I ended up getting my lovely Marie for $2. She lowered the price, and she also sold me like my truly scrumptious doll who still had her outfit for $2. The 2 other Marie Osmond dolls, Island Fun Ken, another Twist and Turn Barbie, they were all like $2 each, and she was super nice and was really glad that all of her dolls that she loved were going to someone who would love them too. And so yeah, I ended up waiting to get my Marie, and then I ended up getting 3 of them at the same time, and that was very exciting. And she's still one of my favorite celebrity dolls, and I managed to reunite my other 2 Marie dolls who I did not originally pull out for the video. I got them dresses later on over the years. So the next doll that the first part got cut out of is Bratz the movie Sheridan. I saw this doll for the first time at my local Walmart. It was in the fall of 2011. I was with my dad and Colleen, and Dad was off in the store getting some kind of food or something, and we looked in the clearance section, which back then the clearance section moved around the store. It would change locations every, few months. So it was kind of in the middle of the store near where like the books and greeting cards were. I found Sheridan's really banged up box all by itself. She was the only Bratz doll in the sales section, and I was super excited because I recognized it right away as being a Bratz movie. And this doll came out in 2007, so she was like 4 years out of date, and when I looked, I realized, uh-oh, her price on clearance is $35. And that's because these Bratz the movie Sheridan, just her, she came with like some kind of digital camera thing that was fancy for its time, and she originally retailed for around $100, I think. So she was 70% off, 65% off. She was substantially marked down. However, I just wanted the doll herself. When my dad came into the aisle to get us, he offered to buy me Sheridan, but I felt bad because we didn't have a lot of money at the time, and I felt silly paying $35 just for her. So I ended up leaving her behind. But as someone who's really into Bratz, who also had great luck finding Sheridan dolls in the wild, I kept thinking about her, and I didn't see her in the clearance section after that, and I just assumed someone bought her until 2 years later. And I know it was 2 years later because I printed out a price tag for her when I went to check her price back in 2011. I had scanned her to make sure that like the label on her was correct, and then I printed out the label after checking it, and so it had the exact date and time. So when I found this doll 2 years later, I could see, like, that's how I knew it was my exact one. So now we'll go back to the original video I filmed so I can finish telling this story. So I pull out the banged box from like the stack it was under, and I look at it, and to my disbelief, it had to be the exact same Sheridan because the price tag that I printed that said like September something 2011 was on it. And she was still $35, of course, Walmart hadn't learned. So at that point though, I was like, what are the odds that this was the only Bratz the movie doll? She had to have been one of the first Bratz dolls they stocked at the store because our store opened in like 2007. And she must have been kicking it around the back room and now is like being shuffled between clearance sections. Like I have no idea where she was like year or two that I didn't see her. So I had to buy her, and it was like, what are the odds really? Because our Walmart gets pretty good foot traffic. I'm guessing it's just because of how expensive she was. So
Because these are from the last couple years. These
Yes.
are older.
this is Girl of the Year, Gabriella from 2017. So I always really liked this doll. I always wanted her, but back in like 2017 when she was out, they didn't really run a lot of sales on Girl of the Years. So it was like one of those you pay full price or you miss out kind of dealies. And she was actually extended into 2018. She was the first Girl of the Year that you could get past her year. But we were broke in 2017 and 2018. So
it didn't help us.
It really didn't help us, and I just couldn't justify like buying her. It was always on the back of my mind that I wanted her, and then when like our financial situation improved and we could afford to buy more frivolous things, of course I thought about Gabriella, and I was just kind of like, I do this sometimes. I'll be like on eBay and I'll be like, what does this Girl of the Year cost now? So I was looking at the end of 2020, like probably September-ish, because it was kind of like itching to get a new American Girl, especially because I had been given Lainey recently. So I'm looking and I see Gabriella from a collector who is like selling off some of their dolls. She was in a lot with like all of her outfits from her collection and a couple of her accessory sets. She had her ears pierced at the Washington DC store, and she had her hair styled. It's no longer in the style, I had to take it out, but it was like in a fancy like waterfall braid. And I really wanted her, and it would have been like getting her on a pretty good American Girl sale for like probably a little more than 20% off of everything for what the seller was asking, which was a pretty good deal. But I was like, no, I really shouldn't be buying any more dolls. My goal this year was to focus on buying clothes for my dolls. So I talked myself out of it.
And for the holiday season, she really did buy clothes for her dolls.
I did. And Colleen couldn't believe I had passed up as Gabriella, right?
Oh yeah, and I thought for sure, because we talked about Gabby for years, and I was like literally since the day she came out, we've been talking about Gabby. And I was like, okay, if Shelly didn't buy that Gabby, which was like the perfect Gabby, because it was literally like, it equated the price we ended up getting her for later, and it ended up being like, kind of like what we paid for Kira on American Girl's actual sale.
Yeah.
For like basically the doll and all her outfits. So I was like, that was the perfect Gabby. She had this cool backstory. She already had her ears pierced. That was the Gabby. If Shelly didn't buy the Gabby, she's not going to handpick a Gabby ever. Like, if we get Gabby, it'll be a fluke. Shelly's never going to make a point in buying Gabby special if she passed up that Gabby. So I even started taking the pictures of her Girl of the Year dolls in their pajamas, because I'm like, I was waiting in case she got Gabby, but she's never going to buy Gabby. Not handpicking her anyway. Like, if she gets Gabby, it'll be a flea market doll. Like, you know, she's not going to make a point of buying Gabby. And I gave up on Gabby.
So then come February.
So now, after the holiday season, she's bought her dolls clothes for Christmas.
Yeah,
So she's done her good deed.
I feel good about myself. And I was like coming out of like my closet.
Yes, I literally remember this.
And I think I had like taken a shower, and I was like coming out of my closet after getting a hoodie. And at the time, I had like a bunk bed, like kind of at the back wall, with my Girl of the Year McKenna sitting there. I lock eyes with my McKenna doll, and all of a sudden, this Gabriella pops into my head. Like, what an association, right? I see her and I'm like, Gabby. And I'm like, I wonder if she's still on eBay. And at this point,
And she verbalized this aloud to me.
yeah, it's been like 6 months just about. So I tell Colleen what I'm doing, and she's like, no.
I'm like, that ship has sailed, Shelly. You lost your chance.
And I like have my Chromebook out and I'm on it. And then I'm like, wait, Colleen, look, she's here. And the price is reduced. And like you could see that they had edited the listing like multiple times over the past 6 months. And Molly could not believe it, but it was definitely the same doll. She had the same like waterfall braid. Of course, I ended up buying Gabby, and I couldn't be happier. And I'm really glad I got this specific doll because I love knowing a little bit about her backstory. Then we have my Cabbage Patch boy named Daniel Joseph. So he's kind of representative of several Cabbage Patch dolls. So before I was collecting Cabbage Patch dolls, they had always been like kind of on the periphery of my brain, because I loved them as a kid, and I think it was just like when I got an American Girl doll and I wanted to be cool and play with my American Girl like Colleen. I think that's kind of how I ditched my childhood Cabbage Patch dolls. But it had been something I thought about, especially as like an adult collector, and I would always kind of notice Cabbage Patch dolls for sale. And I feel like in 2020 there was a seller that had a few older looking ones, specifically like boys dressed up in nice clothes. And in 2021, so like a year later, when I was on my YouTube break, I had started thinking more about Cabbage Patch dolls, and I ended up making the decision to, like, you know, buy one and give it a chance kind of thing. So that was over the summer. That's when I got Baby Martin at an antique store. So of course that door was open wide, and we were looking for them at our local flea market. So I saw a seller who had what looked to me like potentially those old Cabbage Patch dolls I had seen like the previous year. I think that really is the case, though I cannot be sure. So I ended up, they were $20 or $25 at the time. I think they were 20 each. And I ended up buying Dennis Paul, because he was like, he had red hair and I thought he was really unique looking. But I wanted this guy. He has like the tan loops, and he was wearing a mouse sleeper from the same line of sleepers. Kept like going to the flea market every week, and sometimes we would see the seller and sometimes we wouldn't, and sometimes it would look like he didn't have the Cabbage Patch dolls and sometimes it would. And I remember it was a rainy day, and we were like going through the flea market kind of quickly because it was raining. It had started raining, and all the sellers were like covering their stuff up, and I noticed the Cabbage Patch dolls were like huddled under his table.
They looked so sad and cute.
And immediately I'm like, oh, he still has the boy in the mouse sleeper. Anyways, he gave us a rainy day discount, his words. He sold us them each for I think $15. And we got Daniel Joseph, Wendy, and Anna Teresa. I think we got Anna Teresa first, and then we ended up going back like that same day and getting Daniel Joseph. And
yeah.
Because we bought one with a...
Or we got Daniel first, and then we went back for Anna.
We got
and
Anna first.
We got Anna first.
And then when he came back, he said we could still do the rainy day discount, and we bought Daniel Joseph and Wendy too.
So speaking of Cabbage Patch dolls, good segue into Baldwin. So around the time Shelly got Baby Martin at the antique store, we were looking online at the softies because Shelly discovered this magical thing called softies, and it was something we wanted to dabble into. At the time, I think this guy was on Mercari for like, I want to say it was something crazy, like $250.
$350.
Oh my god, that's right, it was insane. It was expensive. It was like buying one new from Babyland. So the price was astronomical, and that just wasn't going to happen, but I was in love with him. He was dressed in his little Cabbage Patch jeans with the Xavier Roberts like stamp on the bum.
He had his little name tag thing that said Baldwin Lance.
Yes, and he had his little flannel shirt, and he had his little shoes, and I thought he was a dreamboat. And I just could not stop thinking about him. I called him Baby Baldwin. I like saw him when I shut my eyes. I was obsessed, but he was way too much money. I kept watching him, and the price started to go down. But it was still too high, and I never thought he'd get in the range I was willing to pay. So, almost a whole year goes by, because it was before Easter 2022. I went on Mercari, and I discovered that he was now about $100.
He was like 120, but we made an offer.
Yeah, because I feel like we got him for like about 110 all said and done. Mm-hmm. And I ended up buying him now and being very, very happy.
He was her Easter gift to herself.
Yes, he was.
And then she ended up stealing my soft sculpture Oscar that I got off eBay, who was also one of those ones that I had seen for the better part of the year, and the price kept going down. who also started off as like ridiculous, like $250.
Oscar came first, and I fell in love with Oscar's brown eyes. And I stole him too. He's on my
She
bed.
now has both of them in her room.
I just love them both. They're so cute. I couldn't believe he was still available, and that he was actually affordable. So he was kind of like my miracle child.
He's cheaper than like what new ones sell. Like, cause the new
I
ones
know.
and his size are usually like $375 to $400, which is a lot.
And I feel like they're not as big as like him
No.
and Oscar and Brigitte, our girl.
Yeah, they're usually like 2 inches shorter.
Okay.
And I just like the look of the 80s ones the best. Like the new ones are cute too, but like the artist changed and you can tell there's just something like I love about the 80s song.
He's my boyfriend.
So then the last doll is quite the journey. This is Jolene. She is my second Julie doll. Her transformation video got uploaded like well over a year after I filmed it, because after my YouTube break I had like a backlog of videos, so things were kind of getting uploaded out of order. I've had her like a lot longer than what might show on my YouTube channel. In November of 2022,
In November of 2022, one day my friend Courtney came in with a big shopping bag, and she handed it to me at my second job. Now the backstory is that I used to work with my friend Courtney at the high school, and then I stopped working there and moved to the other building.
the elementary school.
And changed jobs like a year earlier, and I changed jobs, and my friend Julie had sent in this bag with my friend Courtney. Now my friend Courtney had brought in the bag, and I pulled it all out of it, and I was like, I think that's Krista. And I just said Shelly like a couple weeks before I wouldn't recognize Krista if I saw her, but I did. I recognized Krista in this really nice Felicity doll. And then there was this arm. And I'm like, why is there an arm? And Courtney texted my friend Julie and said, oh, Julie says that the arm goes to Julie. So I come home with Krista and Felicity, who's Shelly named Peridot, and this arm that we set aside. And at first, Shelly was so excited about Krista, the Felicity, that the Julie doll wasn't really on our minds. But the more the weeks went by, the more we started thinking, that poor Julie doll. It turned out that Julie, the person's niece, took Julie the doll out of the bag, but the arm had separated from the Julie doll, and the Julie
There
arm
was
was in the bag.
a failure. They used to, before they did knots in the factory to connect the limbs, they had these like brass inserts. They're little like metal crimpers, and it's not uncommon for those to fail. Like if they get pushed down too hard, they'll like crack. So it just broke, and the limbs will fall off. It wasn't like the elastic was damaged or loose or stretched out. It was literally just a failure of the thing inside, which is one of the downsides to those.
And we didn't really need the other Julie doll. Yeah. We're like, oh, we feel so bad for this Julie doll.
So there was a search party going on.
But the problem was time was running out. The reason time was running out is because not only had I switched from the high school to the elementary, but I was also switching from the after-school program to an after-school program on site at the elementary. And I was going to be making the change after Christmas. Well, the dolls showed up right before Thanksgiving. And that gave us about a month to find Jolene. And Shelly even at some point kind of picked her name.
I had her name picked out.
And we had all these plans, but we weren't sure if she was going to show up. It was literally like one of the last couple days before I changed jobs that Courtney came in.
Well, you had gotten
Jolene.
a text too first.
Oh, that's right. I got a text saying
about
that.
a week before.
That's right. But the problem was my friend Courtney, she's kind of absent-minded, and the doll got stuck in transit.
Yeah,
in Courtney's
desk,
under the desk, and in her car. And like finally the search party had been successful, and time was running out. It was a miracle that Jolene was home for Christmas.
Yeah, and she didn't have an arm. And I remember it was the Thursday before the school Christmas vacation would go. And there's supposed to be a snowstorm on Friday. So I was like, you know, if there really is a snowstorm and school gets canceled, then the after school program will be canceled. And then what will happen with Jolene? But Colleen came out. It's like, you know.
And they throw me a party and everything, a goodbye party.
It's after 6 o'clock at night. Colleen comes out of the building. She holds the armless Julie up victoriously. She has like makeup smeared all over her and is wearing like a mismatched outfit. Just like holding her proudly. Yeah, I love Jolene. I can tell her apart from Julie very easily. They have very different like faces. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We will eventually do some other Dolly Tales episodes in the future on different topics, and if you want to see any of these dolls or read more about them, feel free to check out my Flickr. In theory, you should be able to look at my Flickr without having one, but they've been doing some testing stuff on Flickr, so some people have had trouble getting onto it, so I apologize for that. But yeah, and until next time, love your dolls, love yourself, and love your life.